Hey guys, Rob here at 3D Printscape. I picked up the direct drive conversion kit from printermods.com for my Ender 3, and I'm going to show you how to install that today. So first, let's talk about why you might want to switch over. If you're just running PLA, to be honest, the Bowden system is fine pretty much all the time. But if you're wanting to get into the flexible or more exotic filaments, you're going to want to switch over to the direct drive system. It just makes things a lot easier. This kit wasn't that expensive, and it's going to be using pretty much all of the hardware that we already have here. So the process isn't going to be too bad, but if you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. And if you guys haven't already, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Thanks. Alright, so now let's talk about what we're going to do. This kit that I picked up pretty much came with everything we need, so we're going to need to remove pretty much the entire fan duct cover here. We need to remove the stepper motor from this side along with the filament entry, and then we're going to need to remove our tube, and then we're going to need to cut these cable ties so that we can actually get the tube out of the way. So we'll go ahead and get started by taking off our fan duct cover and then removing the stepper motor. Alright guys, I went ahead and zoomed in on the printer so you can get a better view of what I'm talking about. First thing I want to do is I want to just go through and cut these wire ties. When you're doing this, be very careful. You don't want to cut the actual wires or poke yourself. Alright, now that those are off, let's go ahead and take off our fan duct cover here. So this fan duct cover has a screw here and a screw here. If you're using the stock one, I believe it's the same two screws, so it should come off quite easily. If you're using any of the other modified ones that you could print yourself, most of them should be using the same two screws. Alright, so now let's go ahead and pop this off since we got it out. We want to be careful not to pull in the cables too much. And then I'd just like to set this over here. Alright, next we want to go ahead and remove the hot end. It's just held in place by these two screws, so let's go ahead and take that off. Make sure that you don't lose these screws as you're going. And then I am going to take the tubing out of here now as well. So I'm just taking off the clip, pushing down on this, and then pulling the tubing out. Now we can set this off to the side. Again, be careful not to put too much tension on those cables. You don't want to accidentally mess up the thermidor or anything like that. Alright, next I'm going to pop this clip off and just remove the tubing from our stepper motor. And then just set this off to the side. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera angle so we can take off the stepper motor. Alright, so here we're pretty much going to have to disassemble the top piece, but it's just a couple screws, and then we can actually get to the bottom screws that are holding the stepper motor in place. First, let's go ahead and disconnect the cable going to it. Just kind of let that hang off to the side. And then I'm going to start by removing this back screw here. And that screw had to come out because there's a smaller screw underneath it, and you can't actually get that screw out with the other one in place. Now I'm going to remove this screw. Alright, and then with that screw loose, we can go ahead and pull this part of the fixture up. Be careful because you got your spring here as well. So I'm just going to take this off and set it off to the side. One thing to note is that if you're using the stock plastic parts, you want to just take a look at this, make sure that nothing's cracked or anything like that. So this is good because it's the aluminum one. Alright, now that that's off, we have 3 more screws, one right here, and right here, that we got to take off. And be careful when you're taking off the last screw. It's what's actually holding the stepper motor in place. Alright, so let's go ahead and set this off to the side. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is go ahead and put the spacer on that came with the kit and then start reassembling the extruder. Alright, now that the spacer's on, let's go ahead and put the top piece on here. Note the direction of the cable harness and where the coupler is for your tubing. Now we want to go ahead and put this back screw in here. We don't want to put the screws in here because these are actually going to mount to the fixture. Alright, now that that piece is in, we can go ahead and put on this one piece of the spring. Let's put the screw through. We want to make sure that we're going to have enough clearance here so that we can get the screw to actually go into. We want to make sure that we're putting this in far enough so that there's enough clearance for a bolt to come right in front of it so they can get to the mounting hole underneath it. Alright, now we're going to put on the other part of this. It's just going to screw in as such, and then we want to make sure the spring our spring goes on that one bolt, and then we'll push this in and go to put this screw in. Alright, now that that's together, we can go to move on. Alright, now we want to go ahead and finish taking off this carriage. Next thing we got to do is remove the belt, so we're going to have to loosen up our 2 tension bolts, and then we can get that off. Alright, so I'm going to loosen these up. And then that just slides in a little bit, and just enough to take the tension off. Then we can go ahead and take the belt off. It just kind of slides right out, and just let that drop there. Alright, now we want to go ahead and take the carriage off. We can do that by either taking off the top 2 wheels or taking off the bottom wheel. Alright, now that that's off, we want to actually take off all 3 wheels entirely because we have to reuse them. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera really quick. Alright, so I got the wheels off. I wanted to make a note that the one with the eccentric nut here goes on the bottom. Alright, so now we're going to want to put that on the new carriage. Alright, so I have the new carriage here. Our top 2 wheels are going to go here. The bottom one is going to go here. So we'll go ahead and put the top 2 in, and then loosely put the bottom one on so that we can actually put it back on the railing. Alright, now with those loosely fitted, we can go ahead and set it on the rails and tighten it back up. Alright, now we should be able to just slide this in place. And then we'll go through, we'll tighten up the top 2, and then we'll get the bottom one. Alright, now that those are tightened up, we can see that the cage is still really loose. So let's go ahead and tighten up the eccentric nut. Alright, that feels good. Basically, you want to get to the point where you can move it smoothly without it actually moving the carriage. Alright, next we want to attach a spacer using the 25mm screws. They're not going to be the smallest set of 2 that's in the package, it's going to be the second smallest. Alright, so this is going to go here, and then the screws will just kind of be like that. And then just let that sit there. Alright guys, one thing I wanted to note here is if you're using the stock parts, the spacer fits on here like it should. but if you're using some of the aftermarket ones, it does not. So I'm gonna have to kind of modify this a little bit just so I can get everything to line up right. So I'm back. I basically had to cut that piece into 2 smaller pieces to make it work. And I went ahead and took this spring back out because I was trying to fight with the bolt to get it to align right. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this mounted. That's basically just going to sit in here like that. And we also want to make sure that our coupler is facing down. I'm just tightening this a little bit. I don't want to over tighten it because I still have to get the spacer in. So we'll go ahead and do that. Alright, now that those are both in and loosely tightened, I'm going to go ahead and tighten them all the way up. Alright, now that that's together, we can go put our spring back in. I wanted to make a note that we can't put the bolt in because it's blocked by the spacer. It's not necessarily needed though. So we'll just make sure that this is in the top bolt, or attached to the top bolt, and kind of just push it in place so that it's straight, and then that's going to keep the tension on it. So, alright, so now we want to trim our tubing as needed. It's going to vary based on the hot end you're using. With the micro Swiss hot end, it only goes to here. So I need to trim this quite a bit. With the stock hot end, it pretty much goes down to the bottom like this, so you won't have to trim it as much. And when you're trimming this, you're going to want to use a razor or a tube cutter. You do not want to use any type of just slicers because it will crush it. And the filament will have a hard time coming out. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and mark this where I think it's going to need to be. So this is going to go to there. So let's say I need to cut the filament right there. I'll go ahead and pull this back out, and then I'm going to go cut it really quick. Alright, so I went ahead and cut that. Now that it's good to go, I am going to put it into the hot end. And then push it into the stepper motor. Alright, now I'm going to put my 2 screws in to hold the hot end in place. Alright guys, before we put the screws in here to hold the hot end in place, we have this little spacer we got to put behind it. If not, the hot end is going to be directly on the assembly, and that could end up being bad. Alright, now we can go ahead and put the rubber insulation back on the bottom here. I might have to fight with it around the screw a little bit, but it should go. Alright, now that that's in, I'm going to go ahead and put my clamps in place. Like so. Alright, so now we're going to have to take our fans and BL Touch off of the fan duct cover we had before if you had a modified one. This one won't work with this setup, so we'll do another video on one that will. For now, I'm going to go back to the stock one, so I just need to take this all apart. Alright guys, so I switched back over to the stock cover here. Fun thing about doing mods to your printer is they're not always compatible with each other. So we'll do another video on a fan duct cover that will work with this setup. For now, I'm just going to fall back to the stock one. Alright, and then it's important to note that they're saying that we need to route our hot end cable around the front of this. So we'll go ahead and put our mount back in place. Alright guys, so I had to make a couple adjustments just to get me by short term. I took out the one spacer here and just left a little gap so I can get the original BL Touch cover in. All of this will be swapped out when I do the next video on the fan duct cover. but for now this will at least get us going. Alright, so next what we want to do is connect our belt. Let's go ahead and do this side first. Alright, now that that's in, go ahead and push this out, and then we can tighten it back up. Alright, this is pretty tight, so that should be good now. Alright, so the next thing we got to do is run the cable to our stepper motor. The kit came with an expansion cable here, so we'll go ahead and unravel that. Alright, now that we got the extension cable unraveled, we'll go ahead and connect that here and to the other side. And this will go back, and then it will connect to the cable that was plugged into the stepper motor before. Alright. Alright, another thing to note is that per the instructions, this is supposed to be routed in front of our rail here, and then it mounts over on the plastic clipping. I'm pretty sure it's set up that way to prevent any type of kinking or anything like that in the cables, but if it's ran right, that shouldn't be an issue. So I'm going to try to run it without, and if I run into any issues, I'll let you guys know. Because I hate messing with the heating element and thermidor if I don't have to. Alright, next guys, we've got to talk about cable management. They provide multiple anchors that you can use for zip ties. This one would go here if you're routing the cables across. You would have one that goes back on this stepper motor, and then one that goes right here. So we can go ahead and put those in place. They do provide the longer screws for it, so we'll go ahead and put this one in. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this one in as well, even though I'm not going to use it right now. Alright, then I'm going to turn this around here, and then we're going to put the last one on this stepper motor here. Alright, then again, these are all just used for cable management. How you use them is kind of up to you. I'm going to flip this back around, and then I'm going to clean up these cables a little bit, and then the kit also came with some blue tubing that we can use as well. So I'm not going to put the tubing on yet. So let's go ahead and just put a couple of these zip ties in. I don't want to put too many of these on right now, just in case I have to make some changes when we're going through and putting on the new fan duct cover. But I will put a couple in. Alright, so then I'm going to move this all the way to this side to make sure that we have enough coverage. And then I'm going to move this up as well to do the same. Alright, and then what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to use the original mount that the stepper motor is on and kind of use that as an anchor. So I'm just going to put one more zip tie through there and go ahead and tighten this down, make sure I have enough slack, because this will be going up and down with the Z-axis, so we shouldn't have any issues there. And again, this is all just cable management. A lot of people do things differently. This probably isn't the best way, but it's not going to be permanent. All right, so let me go ahead and cut these pieces off. Right, and then you could put one more zip tie here. I'm going to hold off on that for now, just because I don't know what it's going to look like with the fan duct cover yet. Then you can also go ahead and run your tubing. It would just go over everything like so. You can also put the zip ties on the outside of it as well. Typically that's what you would do when you're running it. Again, I'm just kind of keeping everything usable for now until I can get the new fan duct cover printed. Alright guys, so I went ahead and adjusted my Z offset. I went from negative 0.22 to negative 0.75, and then I went ahead and loaded some filament. I did not go through my smart filament sensor because I have all of that disabled right now, but I will be enabling that pretty soon as well. I went ahead and kicked off a test print just to make sure everything works as expected. Alright guys, so everything's looking good now. I still need to go through and calibrate my E-steps, but I'll go ahead and do that off video, and I will link to the video that I did covering that entire process start to finish. It's a little bit more than I wanted to add to this video because it's already going to be somewhat long as it is. And the next video I do, hopefully coming out later this week or early next week, is going to be finding a good fan duct cover that works with the direct drive system, and then putting that in place. The one I had on there before said it worked with direct drive, but it didn't actually work with this direct drive system. As you get into mods, you'll learn that things don't necessarily play nicely together, so sometimes you got to make adjustments and just go with it. Also wanted to point out again that per the instructions, they recommend running this cable across the front here and connecting to the zip tie adapter that they provided. I did not want to do that just because I didn't want to mess with the heating element or thermidor, and I wanted to see if it would work fine like this. I think it will, but if I run into any issues, I'll let you guys know. And if you have any questions about the process or would like to see any other videos, go ahead and leave a comment below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.